Hi, I'm General Clint Fisher. Welcome to episode 2 of Open World. Open World generally is a video game focused show, but we're going to do a little bit of a detour and do a show that's kind of focused on design. Design takes multiple shapes. Video games, it takes quite a few forms, whether it be sound design, art direction design, gameplay design, UI design. Design takes all sorts of forms and factors because design, kind of in a nutshell, is really problem solving. And so I wanted to take us to a 2004 exhibition from a bunch of graduating art design students at University of Texas, and just kind of see the various ways that design actually can pop up in worlds outside of video games proper. The exhibitions I'm going to show do have some parallels in terms of dealing with community, and in terms of communicating information. So there are lessons to be learned from looking outside of the sphere of video games to possibly solve problems for video game creators and communities. So hopefully this winds up having some value back towards that. The first exhibition is called Mint in Box, and it's presented by Simone Weil. Simone Weil has some involvement with Juegos Venceros, which was featured in the first podcast, but also is the creator of the Famicom Museum and the Femi 5 podcast, which are aimed at educating and showing the history of games and technology aimed at girls. And a lot of the focus of her project, as Rachel will explain, a lot of the purpose of this project is to kind of look at things that are considered girly games and therefore kind of thrown into kind of the gamer cultural ghetto as unimportant and not bad, and representing those things as important as they were to the girls that played them.
You all have traveled over to my slot. Thanks for being here. My part of the exhibition is called Mint in Box, and that phrase might be a little unfamiliar, but it's a collector's term, a term popular with video game collectors. That means that an item is in mint condition and in its original box, so mint in box. And my work, I'm really interested in exploring this collector culture and also the collectability and value of games, specifically games that feature sort of a feminine design element or are sort of considered girls' games or pink games. I've been playing video games my whole life, but I got really into them when I was about 15 or 16. And the reason for that is that I got the internet in my house. And this was a great opportunity for me to learn about games that I had never seen or heard of, games that had never come out in the US, and especially games from Japan, which was sort of the cultural center of gaming in the 90s, obviously Nintendo and Sega, both companies from Japan. And one thing that had always kind of alienated me from gaming culture is the sort of violent and competitive tone of it. And so I enjoyed technology and computers, but that part always kind of kept me away. And when I went online and read about games from Japan, I found a lot of very cutesy, girly games that featured Hello Kitty and Sailor Moon, and I was hooked, right? I was so into that stuff. But it caused me to ask some questions, serious questions about gaming culture. I was curious why these games had never come out in the US, why they had never been translated and localized. I was also curious why girly sort of games that I remember from the 80s and 90s were never critically well received. And I was also curious why, for example, Barbie games were never very collectible. I would go on eBay and see them on sale for so cheap, even if they were mint in box. So this line of questioning really drew me to come to study at UT and kind of investigate that question. What I came to discover is a lot like chick flicks or romance novels or these media forms that are sort of feminized. Girls' games or pink games are kind of seen as a culturally lower form. And that's not something that men sat around and decided. That's kind of a cultural dance that men and women do together. And it's about negotiating sort of power and taste and sort of authority and authenticity, and I found that process really interesting. I guess I will talk a little bit about the works that are shown here. My methods of working have involved two kind of parallel methods, which are uncovering true histories and designing false histories. So when I say uncovering true histories, I mean publicizing real, actual things that happened in the 80s and 90s with respect to girls' games, but aren't part of the collector culture, or the sort of history and nostalgia and all these things that are sort of related to the value of video games. I think that's something that these early games suffer from, is that they're not embedded, they don't have this sort of embedded value in them. So the work over here is it's simply a case of 6 Barbie games released between the years 1995 and 1997. And I put them in this very fine-looking, beautiful glass case, and with very lovely, dramatic lighting, to kind of ask you as the viewer to come to them with a sense that they are valuable. I think they're valuable as sort of moments in girls' gaming history in the U.S., moments that are often forgotten. But to be honest, I bought all of these on eBay, maybe this year, and they were all very, very inexpensive, even though these games are 20 years old, and as you can see, they're in very nice condition into the box. Right? They've never been played. I had to peel off like $8 stickers from all of these to indicate to you that they were sort of valuable and precious in this case. So this is an example of what I mean by uncovering true histories. My alternate sort of like evil side of this project is designing false histories. And what I mean by that is sort of playing at the borders of fact and fiction to kind of question the way that we construct history. Because I think so often it's not about discovering the truth, but sort of reinforcing things we already believe about what happened in the past. And sort of reinscribing these barriers that women and other marginalized groups face in things like engaging in video games. So the piece over here is called Game Room, and this is a false history. It's a little bit difficult to decode for those of us who maybe aren't familiar with gaming, but I'll try to walk through it very briefly. The placard over here indicates that this is a typical 1990s gamer's den, and it features the 91 NES game Electronic Suite of Fun Fortune Teller. And both of those things are false. I think if you ask someone who's familiar with gaming in the 90s to compose a typical gamer's bedroom, they would not include Judy Blume paperbacks and ballerina music boxes. Because there's this sort of idea that, it was boys playing video games in the 90s. So I'm interested in sort of tweaking that, saying, what happens when you make this sort of a girly or girl-friendly space and then call it typical and put it in a museum and put it on a placard on the wall? This game here, which I turned the sound off so you guys can hear me and be spared the repetitive sound. It's very lovely, but it goes on and on. This is actually not a game from 1991, but it's a game that I created in last year for an original 80s era Nintendo console. And so I'm interested in playing at this idea of authority and authenticity, but what I've created is a very pastel game about love and horoscope fortune telling. And so, again, this is my sort of tweak at creating a history that is a false history, but a history that I would have really enjoyed had this been available to me in the 90s. And the truth is that it wasn't. The culture was very oriented to boys, and you see that in some of the posters that are in this wall, these sort of macho tough guy posters, the arcade players and things like that. So I think, I hope this has been kind of a valuable work in terms of questioning how history is constructed and how we value things on the basis of something as simple as the color pink. What sort of expectations we bring to the table and how we can sort of morph those expectations. And my favorite observation on opening night was seeing young girls run into the space and be excited. They ran over to the case, they wanted to know how to play the games over there, they ran to this space, I could not believe this console is as old as some of their parents, and they knew how to use it, which was amazing and really touching. because I was comparing it to my own experience as a young girl, where I felt alienated and separated from the culture that I was really interested in, that felt that there were barriers around me. So I think that's all. Thanks, and I think it's safe.
For more information on what Rachel's doing with the Femicom Museum and the Femi5 podcast, please go to www.femicom.org. The next exhibition that we're going to share is from Mariana, Cano, and it's called Busca. She took the task of looking at all really kind of poor communities that are kind of riddled with reputations for violence, and kind of looking and examining ways to have people reclaim those communities and reclaim what those identities are with positivity. And in particular with her project, reaffirming people who are doing positive things by having people search for and celebrate people who were heroes in the community.
Thank you all for being here. So being from Mexico and being surrounded by all the stories that you probably going to see in the projector, it's okay. I wondered if graphic design could be used as a tool to affect some kind of change in this area or in social context in general, but in my graduate study we specified in the violence in Mexico. So last year I spent the summer doing ethnographic research in a community in Chihuahua called Sacramento, which is a relatively new community in the outskirts of Chihuahua. It's a very low socioeconomic status community and a very violent place. So while I was doing research there and with the things that I already knew about, traditional graphic design such as branding and all these things, there's a guy called Kinbarovsky that talks about branding, and he says that brand cultures are formed by taking for granted stories and about a brand that can come from market-induced experience or organization-induced, right? So if we think of this community as a brand, it's all pretty much negative because all the market-induced components, which is the news and word of mouth and this kind of stuff, is basically what you see in the projector over there. So it's pretty negative, and if you think about organization, there's no really organization doing something to make this better, and the experience is obviously the violence itself, right? So I wondered, so I was invited to a project that was to design the branding of the school that is being built there. And since I had been doing research in this community, I understood that the branding of the school being the first positive visual, tangible, positive thing in the community, because they're not even a grocery store here, would be that it had to be related to the community itself and not just in the fact that it was a school, right? So going back to the research and all the interviews and surveys, people really value their home there, no matter if it's big, small, full, crowded, empty, whatever. And they really, that's kind of if I would ask them what is the best thing about this community, and they would draw their houses and all this, right? So in some pictures you can see the houses like this one and this one, they're government houses. So they're all basically the same, and they have this geometric pattern in the house, right? So I took the geometric elements of it and put them in the letters, and we told the community the story about how the identity was based in their homes, right? And they were really excited. They started spreading around this story and or this new kind of narrative about this place. And we were really concerned that people were not going to embrace the school and they were just going to vandalize it or steal it or steal stuff from the school. And now it hasn't been vandalized. There's been a lot of support to it because people really got excited about that we took their kind of we took them in account because it's something for them and they didn't feel it as pity or charity or anything like that. So after doing all that research, I started gathering a lot of positive stories, and I really wanted to share this because what we are filled in is basically all the violence, right? And we talk about it all the time and just that, right? So I started a project called Busca, which means wanted. It's inspired in wanted posters that we see all over Mexico. But the difference is that instead of asking for people that have disappeared or criminals, which is not really effective, like I won't call it, but it asks for people that are considered local heroes, right? So I started it kind of as an experiment, and I started releasing a bunch of teasers like it was coming soon, and a lot of people started asking questions about it. So I placed, during 10 days, I placed posters in the streets, the booklets in public places like coffee shops, parks, gyms, stuff like that. The bulletin boards outside church and things like that. So during 10 days, people were able to write people that they consider local heroes, right, and why, right? So in those 10 days, I got over 200 local heroes kind of recorded, and which I did not expect at all. So after that, I wanted to take it one step further, right? And so one idea, I started having a lot of questions about like, are we going to support all of them, just one, or are we even going to like try to support them? Like people sometimes just need a pat in the back and say like, oh, it's good that you're doing that job. The local heroes were persons from an owner of or somebody that started a nonprofit to, a mother of 8 kids that raised them alone, stuff like that, right? So I decided to choose 3. One that would be the name most repeated per edition. The second one would be a person chosen randomly, because I thought it was kind of unfair that maybe, the mother of 8 might only get 8 votes, right? So one would be chosen randomly from the pool of participants, and the last one would be somebody that the organization or like the project people would choose. And the idea is to build an economic kind of engine around these people. So we invited a lot of local businesses to participate when the campaign was on, and there was a lot of support. So now the idea is that these winners, these 3 people, are going to have a card that identifies them as local heroes, right? So when they walk in a business that supports local heroes, they might get, some kind of discount or a free cup of coffee, because a lot of people want to support other, the situation or help out, but they don't want to get involved into donate all this money or whatever. But sometimes maybe owner of a coffee shop might be able to be like, oh, I'll give you a free cup of coffee, right? So the idea is to get the community involved, so that people that are doing good stuff are recognized, and then more popular conversations start because of it. So those are basically.
The final exhibition that I will share from Playgrounds came from Jesse Kinbarovsky, and it's called T1B Suite. Jesse took on the task of coming up with an inventive way of sharing and communicating of diabetics' blood sugar levels in such a way that people who may not understand the math and the different logics, the logic of the numbers that are displayed would come off on more easily, and that's by color or by sound. And it's a really interesting and inventive technology that's still under development, but I wanted to share what he had to show.
So the problem that I didn't intend to work on at all in graduate school is what I ended up working here. I felt like I should not do work for myself, sort of. I should be thinking about other people. But as it turns out, there's a lot of people that need this. I think it's worked out well. So the wayfinding work that I've done in the past is really about designing systems, helping people navigate their way intuitively from one place to another. And I've taken on not only that same way of thinking, but also some of the verbiage of wayfinding. Because being a diabetic is really about a journey. Every day involves just a ton of small decisions. And one of those decisions involves numbers. So I test my blood sugar 7 to 10 times every day. That number tells me what I should do. I act on that. If it's high, I take insulin. If it's low, I eat something with sugar. Testing 7 to 10 times a day means that I'm often making additional calculations based on that. So the numbers proliferate quite rapidly. I think about my blood sugar every, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and that's typical of diabetics. So it's really hard to sort of get out of that way of thinking and just sort of experience the world. I tend to think about numbers, and it's a very unnatural way to think. Robert McCullough is a neuroscientist who talks about the difference between religion and science and mathematics in the way that we think. And that religion, whether we're interested in that or not, tells us things in a narrative way, whereas calculations and numbers are really hard for us to get into this space of thinking. We think in symbolic language and analogy and things like that. So as a diabetic, there's something called tyranny of numbers. As I've described, it's that calculation, the endless stream of numbers coming at you. And then there's emotional fallout, and that comes from a variety of sources. One would be the loss of freedom that I've described in having to check and think about your body all the time. My mouth is a little dry right now because I had to walk from way off campus because of the parking. But it makes me think my blood sugar might be high. So that's how I tend to think of everything that happens in my body. And between those two things, there's something called treatment fatigue that a lot of diabetics go through, and they no longer adhere to treatment. So what I'm really trying to do is intervene in that treatment fatigue and draw treatment closer to the way we think, rather than trying to reach out and engage in treatment that's very foreign to us. So I've developed this suite of tools that you can see here. One of them is a Bluetooth-enabled glucose tester, and I'll actually pass it down so that's it's a glucose tester, and what it does is I decided to make this thing out of a fine wood, at least for the prototype. And there's no display on it. Rather, you get a range in color. And those colors are based on the emotions that you might feel. So low blood sugar often induces anxiety. And that's because there's not enough sugar going to the brain. You start to think that your thinking gets cloudy. And then there's things like depression with high blood sugars. And so the lights reflect that. And what's special about the glucose tester, you wouldn't know it based on what's on the market. But the thing is like an artificial limb, and you really carry it around with you all the time. And yet it's made out of plastic. It's highly industrialized. It's really shooting for as close to $10 as they can possibly get it. And there's benefits to that in terms of people who can afford another glucose tester. However, in the nearly 100 diabetics that I've interviewed at this point, they would all pay well over $100 for a tester that reflected the way that they think about that price and the way they think about the disease. And it's just not being looked at that way. And using wood, using materials and ways of communication that are more intuitive and sensitive to the way that we think about the world and ourselves draws that process closer, and it becomes more of a ritual, which it really is. I go through rituals, dozens of times every day. Yet it's very much a very healthcare-oriented model, whereas diabetes is a self-managed disease. So in addition to that blood tester, I developed a prototype, something I'm calling the beacon. And what that is it's a lamp, and it's also a speaker, so that when I test my blood sugar, I get the key and the light that is associated with what I might be feeling at that time. The anxiety, there happens to be a key, a D sharp minor, which actually has been tested in a wide variety of cultures and has been shown to have similar reactions sort of universally, that we feel anxious when we hear certain keys. And so what that does is it draws the family in the home into a collaborative care model, which has been shown to increase adherence by close to 50%. So it's significant to draw the people around you in, and it's a beacon because it's an outward sort of communication, whereas the tester that's being passed around is very personal, and you treat it in a more careful way. And on the other side is this app that I've prototyped, which is a way to create songs based on your blood sugar. So again, a low blood sugar, you can put it into a sequencer that is in D sharp minor at a specific rhythm. And what you can do is then drag other melodies in and start to create something in a strange way, collaborate with your disease to create something meaningful. And then the next time you're low, you can put that in your settings, and that is the song that you get when you're low. And so there's been, I've patented the products, and I'm working hard to try to get them to the market. And it's interesting that in my research of the market, there's a study called Dawn. There's Dawn and Dawn 2, diabetics, and it's the way we think about disease. And it's been shown that adherence and emotional well-being are very strongly tied together. And so what this is a way to try to get closer to an acceptance of the disease rather than a denial. A lot of diabetics go through that feeling of denial, and then move away from adherence. And so what's interesting about that Dawn study is that they have 5 major recommendations for healthcare in the treatment of diabetes and other chronic illness. And this hits all 5 of those recommendations. That sort of happened unknowingly because I came to that study a little bit later. But they have to do with collaborative care. This also takes your blood sugar reading and puts it into a cloud using HealthVault or Apple's new HealthBook platform, so that your healthcare provider can then also access that information, not just for blood sugar readings, but also for your emotional state. In addition to collaborative care, there's others about working with your disease acceptance. So I'm really happy about that. I think this has a strong place in the market, and what I really want to do is make life better for diabetics. This program has really been about values for me, and I realized late in the game, I started working on this really in the beginning of December, and I realized late in the game that my values were leading me towards not just the digital physical interface that I was so interested in, but in actually making people's lives better in that way. And so, while I could have created something that was fun and interesting, I'm really proud that I was able to do something that I hope has meaning for people. And specific.
And that was Jesse Kinbarovsky's T1D Suite presentation. Again, I speak with him this week. He said things were still in development and there was nothing new to share, but hopefully we can see some big things out of that in the future. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. And we'll probably get more to games proper in the next episode, but I thought this exhibit was really interesting and I really want to share it as part of the show. In the meantime, be well and enjoy your world.